contact live. She's at the Brisbane Emergency Headquarters at the moment. All right, let's look at the facts at this hour. 10 people have died. The search and rescue missions are underway for about 67 people, we understand, still missing in the Lockyer Valley west of Brisbane. That number, thankfully, has just been revised down. You remember in the last hour we've been reporting a staggering 90 people were missing. As I said, that number is now down, which is some good news. We also know about 1,500 people have already been evacuated in Brisbane. More than 50 suburbs will be hit by flooding. Nearly 20,000 Brisbane homes will be inundated. We're expecting about 3,500 commercial properties to also be impacted in some way. Look, we're also talking about a glimmer of good news for Ipswich. The flood levels are expected to drop within the next 36 hours, we're being told, and that'll allow the clean-up to really begin. And we also know that about 1,100 Ipswich people are currently sheltering in evacuation centres at the moment. OK, let's go to Brisbane now, and Nine's Queensland's weather reporter Gary Youngbury joins us now from our Brisbane studio along with Nine's presenter Heather Ford. Good afternoon to you both, two people that know this city back to front.
That's right. Hi Wendy, how are you?
Yeah, it's a busy day, it's a busy day. What's the outlook at the moment in Brisbane?
Well, what a difference a day makes. I mean, yesterday was literally our darkest day, you know, in many ways. And then we've woken to this amazingly sunshiny day, you know, blue skies. And it's a really eerie feeling up here because, you know, we are facing a catastrophic flood, and we have our first fine day that we've had in, what, 3 months?
Well, basically it is about 3 months, and that's where that false sense of security comes in. We can see a few patches of blue sky, people starting to venture out on the streets now, which is becoming a real issue, a real problem. We really don't need that because the clean-up, that's what we need with all our emergency services.
That's right. On the way into work this morning, you know, you'd come across these big piles of traffic and you think, oh, the road's blocked, but it's actually people getting out and taking photos. It's sort of becoming a tourist event, and Anna Bligh was really warning people that, you know, there's 23,000 people who need to get, you know, to higher ground and to evacuate their homes. You know, we don't need people out taking photos of flood damage.
And especially, you know, we're talking about that mark of 4.5 metres this afternoon, but, you know, those calculations are changing. And we do have that big tide that's due in about 3 hours' time. And these are live pictures of the Brisbane River. You can see just the veracity of the current that's flowing down here.
And this here, to give you some sort of idea, this is a pontoon here, which normally has massive big pylons, and, you know, it's just really coming up. It's already breached over here. This excavator has been trying to shore up this shoreline here, you know, because they're massive big construction sites behind it.
Well, I've been having a lot of questions, Heather, about why all these pontoons. It's this constant flow of pontoons, and often pontoons with vessels on that pontoon, and they actually haven't broken away. How they actually sit, the pylons are actually cemented into the riverbed, and the pontoons slide over the top of those pylons. And you often on low tide see these 3 to 4 metre pylons sticking up, and that is to cope with the tide. So what's happened, to put it in perspective, the water has risen that high, the pontoons have floated over the top of the pylons, and that's why we have them floating downstream with vessels still attached on them.
I mean, Moreton Bay is going to be absolutely chock full of, you know, TVs and pontoons and boats.
Boats all caught on the side of Moreton Bay, North Stradbroke and Stradbroke. But
someone also pointed out that all these snakes and wildlife that are being washed down are going to end up all on our islands. You know, in Rockhampton, the Fitzroy River, when it was in full flood, just to give you an idea of the force of the water, is that a cow was spotted swimming 12 k's off the coast on the tip of North Keppel Island. Now, that's 12 k's and this cow is still swimming.
That is quite incredible, and it just shows the actual force. You know, this is travelling at probably 4 or 5 knots or even stronger, and that's why a few of the actual yachties have had trouble trying to go against the tide because their vessels are just not quite powerful enough to fight against the current. It really is that strong.
There is an iconic restaurant that you might have heard of. It's called the Drift Restaurant, and it's just around the river on the other side of these buildings. And it has been in danger of, you know, breaking off and breaking up. And it did take off down the river, and we've just heard that it's actually sunk.
Was it called the Drift Restaurant before?
No, it was actually, it used to be called Oxley's Wharf, and then just recently, ironically, it became called Drift Restaurant. So unfortunately that's gone, but can you imagine the debris? So it's a real sort of eerie feeling, you know. Everybody who's grown up here in Brisbane, you know, I was 8 when the '74 floods hit, and as a child I didn't understand the enormity of it, but as our generation grew up, it was always surrounded by stories of, you know, the horror stories of where the watermarks came to and how many people were killed. And everybody who has grown up in Queensland understands the severity of that. And so that's why today, around Brisbane, everybody has just a sick feeling of panic, because we were assured for the last 20 years that now that Wivenhoe has been built, that it won't happen again. But now it has.
That's the main thing. Before Wivenhoe Dam, the 74 floods, so the amount of water that created that 5.45 metre mark. But to have Wivenhoe built and to be releasing to Sydney harbours, you know, every day, and still to get this flood peak, it's quite incredible.
Imagine what would happen, you know, if we didn't